Okay, so this is the last part, just about putting together the pieces and what the big picture of the program is. And there are two red scribbles. Okay, so what is the big picture? Well, there's only three real parts of this project that need to interact. So the first video we had the Caesar shift function, which takes in the plain text and a number which tells you how much to shift. There's the decode and the helper function isWord, which we saw in the second video. isWord just takes in that text file, words.txt, and looks to see if your input is in the list, so it checks if it's an English word or not. Decode was the interesting function that takes an already encoded message, cipher, and just goes through all the possibilities and picks the one that looks the most like English, so that decodes. Now, how will those interact in the user-facing final product? Well, it'll be kind of a basic, or at least the way I would do it, is kind of a basic logical flow. So at the beginning you should ask the user what he wants to do, encode a message or decode. If he wants to encode, then you have to ask him for two things. You ask what is his message and what is the shift he wants to use, and then once you have those two things you go over to this function, Caesar shift. So then you just put the two things into Caesar shift and print out whatever the result is. If instead the user says to decode, then you have to just ask him for one thing, what is his cipher, the encoded message, and then you just run this function decode and print out whatever the result is. So there's two possibilities. The user can choose between them and just maybe loop so he can keep picking different things or something. So what would that look like? Well, here I have this IDE where I've basically organized the program the way I would. So I don't know if you can actually see this. Let me move it a little bit so it fits in where I'm recording. Here we go. Okay, so on the left pane is all the code. So this is the same thing we've seen in the first two videos. So there's this beginning part where I'm just defining the word list, and notice that you have to tell Python the full path to wherever that words.txt is. So I've just put the C users, blah, 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 the place where I put the file. So you just replace that with wherever you've stored the file when I sent it to you. And then here's the thing we saw in the second video where I read in the words. And everything else is just copy-pasted from before. We have that isWord function. We have the Caesar cipher that does the encoding given a shift. We have decode that loops through all of the possible decoded message and picks the best one and outputs that. And then to tie it all together, I just have this kind of simple looking loop at the bottom. So you probably know in Python this if name equals main, that's the block that tells you what to do when you run the .py file. So I've just done a very silly thing where I say, alright, done equals false. So that just says the program's not done running. And then I have a while loop. So while you're not done, so that means when done is false, we're going to try, I put in the try just in case the user does something stupid and throws an error, then it goes to accept. But anyway, you just try. I define this variable whatDo, which asks the user enter 1 to encode, 2 to decode, 3 to quit, and it turns that into an integer. So if whatDo is 1, which means the user wants to encode, we just ask him enter your message, put that in a variable called plain message. What is your shift? Put that in a variable called shift. Then I run the Caesar cipher function. That was the one back over here. Oops, not there. Over here. The Caesar cipher. That's the one we want to run. And stop it. Well, don't really want this. Right, so you run the Caesar cipher function, and then you print whatever the result is. Your encoded message is this. If he enters 2, so he wants to decode, same thing. Cipher message, you ask the user enter your cipher. You run the decode function, and then you print that out. If he enters 3 to quit, because I said up here 3 is to quit. If he enters 3 to quit, I set done equal to true, so the program terminates. And then, then there's this except at the bottom. That's just in case he does something stupid, like enters something besides 1, 2, or 3, or does something painful. So what does it look like when that runs? Well, okay, I can enter 1 to encode, enter my message with a shift of 1, and then it has this thing that we saw before, which is the correct encoding. So let me just copy that. And let's just check that it can decode. So I'll enter 2 to decode, paste that cipher in, and then yes, it correctly decodes my message. I could do something more complicated. This is a long complicated message with a shift of, I don't know, 17. And then it gives me this thing. I'm just going to verify that we can decode that. So now I enter 2 to decode. I paste the cipher back in, and it figured out this is a long, complicated message. Then when I say 3 to quit, the program just terminates, and it spits me back out to the Python shell. Okay, so, I mean, hopefully this is all pretty clear. I think this is a reasonable AP Computer Science Principles project. It has the requirements of integrating a couple algorithms. I mean, we have a couple algorithms like the Caesar cipher, and we have a maximization problem where we take the max of a list, and it has some other logic like some flow control, some if and else if and things like that. So I think it satisfies all the requirements. I'll send you the words.txt file. You're welcome to, I mean, just look at this video to get ideas about how to run the code, or if like you're really stuck, I can just send you this Python file. But good. Hopefully that helps. Ask me if there are questions, but otherwise I will end the video here.